Okay, private lesson time. And before we look at your video with finer things, any questions, or is there anything in particular you wanted to address?
I can't think of anything. I still notice when I watch the video, I'm not noticing it as much when I ride, that she has the ability to really shake me around, so to speak.
Mm,
You know, that her barrel is still so hard to keep still.
yes. And so knowing what you know about spinal functions, what would that alert you to? If you feel, and let's be specific first about direction and magnitude, because every use of the spine is going to generate a magnitude of force in a specific direction, right? So the way we sort of decipher what spinal function might need to be addressed as the primary issue of the moment, not that it doesn't change, but usually the most obvious thing is where the horse needs help first. So what direction, when you say it's hard to sit still, it's hard to maintain your stability, what direction do you
At the
sense?
at the walk, and I saw it. I mean, I feel it, but it looks so much bigger when you watch it than, than what you
Yes.
feel. It's
Yeah,
like,
because
really, am I doing that?
we get used to everything.
Yeah. So I'm noticing, this rolling at the walk.
Great.
It's this. But at the trot, it's up and down.
So you're being catapulted at the trot. Okay.
Yes.
That's actually the same problem. So what you're feeling at the walk as a rolling motion side to side
Yes.
is rotation. That's the function of rotation, which in us is twisting. So when we put that horizontally into a horse's spine, it's rolling. And so there's an instability there in the function of rotation, right? Then when you go to trot, the reason you get catapulted with that same function is because when the spine, the axial skeleton, is hypermobile in rotation, the muscles are going to have to excessively contract for any increase of power, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually the tight muscles in the back that catapult us and make the horse hard to ride. And we say a lot of times, oh, it's just a big moving horse, which she is. She has a lot of suspension.
Yes.
She is a big moving horse, but the feeling of it is vastly different. You can have a big moving horse that has a lot of suspension through the use of the legs that doesn't unseat the rider.
That's the thing. And I see it when I lunge her, especially in downward transitions. She like totally locks her legs.
Yes.
And it goes into her belly. She moves her belly into her trunk instead of the other way around.
Exactly. So instead of using the shock absorbers of the legs in flexion and extension of the leg joints, she's flexing and extending the spine. Yeah. And so that trunk fluctuation is just an exaggeration of what you're feeling in the walk.
Yes.
So if in the walk you still see and feel that much instability, it can tell us that either the spine is still primarily pushing down in extension with hyper rotation as a side effect of extension, or she's out of extension, but the muscles and use of the tendon and ligaments that support the stability of the axial skeleton are not strong. So there's just a looseness because the back muscles are not strong in supporting stability, which means they have to excessively contract whenever you want more power, which is going to catapult you out of the saddle. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we'll look at the video. Oh, hang on. I got to share the screen for you to look at it. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So let me hit play. The other thing is, as you've developed her, part of the reason you might not be noticing it when you ride is because it's better than it used to be.
Maybe, yeah, it's not as big,
It's not as big. And that's where a lot of riders get stuck because you start with something that's huge and obvious and a real problem. And as you make improvements on the way to balance, you're always gaining more stability as you improve balance. So she's probably more stable than she's ever been, but that doesn't mean completely stable, which
right.
is the goal. So any movement, even subtle side to side shifting, still tells us there's a dysfunctional use of the spine. There's an imbalance. So where she's carrying her neck right this moment could be that she's still in extension. She has the neck muscles lengthening with a little bit of a drop pull, and she looks long and level. But if you watch your seat, when she looks long and level, she's still shaking you significantly side to side.
And that's what I feel. I still feel that she's in extension underneath me.
Right.
Even though her neck might look better, it still doesn't feel
And it
like
is
it should.
better. But where she used to be more high headed in what we would call sort of obvious extension, the back goes down, the head goes up, or she also was able to push the back down and overflex the neck forward,
Yes, she's
dropping
good
her
at that.
pull.
Mhm.
And this is the challenge when you have kind of a loose, wiggly horse, is they can be an extension with many different uses of the head and neck. But the
Yes.
way you're recognizing extension as the side to side hyperrotation side effect, that's our true way of knowing whether or not they're in extension a lot, coming out of extension, or still in extension a little. And I would say she's still in extension a little, because when you truly have sort of that basic balance posture of long and level, which is what she appears to have, you have way more stability in the saddle than what you're riding.
Yes.
So what that tells you is this is kind of the version, sneaky version of the back pushing down that we would call isometric holding. So
Okay.
when you take that to trot, like her back muscles are still overly contracted, trying to stabilize. That's actually what shakes us. It's not the bones that shake us, it's the tight muscles that shake us. When the bones are stable, the muscles become supple and fluid, and that's what makes us feel stable as riders or makes the horse feel easy to ride. So what I would say is you need, and she starts to seek it once in a while. I think you need a deeper version of long and low,
Okay.
really with her head below the withers, to make sure that you're fully out of extension. Not that we want long and low, but we want to make sure that you're getting the muscle change from shortening and contracting into full length, which will be more obvious if she were a bit lower. So going into the trot, you see her really elevate her neck, and you see how much it shakes you.
Everywhere.
Yeah, that's extension. Hang on, let me turn off the sound. There we go. So even though you've made huge headway with getting her out of extension, it's still her go-to posture, especially when you add more pushing power and ask for trot. So why do you think that she's still resorting to extension or holding extension in this last subtle version? Why would a body choose to do that?
Well, I mean, it's her habit. It's always been her go-to. It's the rotation that I can't seem to get a grasp on.
Right.
And when and this is what happens if we're just walking around and she's on a loose rein, we're fine. But as soon as I ask her to do something, that's what she resorts to.
So what do you mean by she's fine on a loose rein?
If I just have no rein contact,
Mm-hmm. She
she
does
will
what?
she usually will drop her head, whether she's in extension or not. She might still be in her back, but she will drop her head more.
So if you have no rein
Mhm.
contact, she's lower than what she's
Yes.
showing in the video.
Yeah.
Okay. So that just tells us a bit sensitivity, right? And the bit
Mhm.
sensitivity is directly related to the stability of the hindquarter. So as soon as she feels any resistance from the reins, because she's not stable in her hindquarter use, she resorts to extension. Are you following me on this progression?
Yeah.
It's all kind of connected, right?
Mhm.
So without rein contact, she completely drops her head below her withers, correct?
Yeah, and she'll even trot with her head down.
Okay, then that's what I would do, number one.
Okay.
And why wouldn't you? What's the reason in your mind that you haven't either allowed that or worked that way?
Um, I think it has to do with shooting the videos because I'm trying to stay in a certain place
Mm-hmm.
to capture the video. So I'm having to give her more directions than say when I'm not recording anything and we're just not looking for any steering at all.
So do you need a rein contact to steer?
Sometimes it just depends. Sometimes I can steer her without it, and sometimes I can't. But she looks like she's getting a little better.
Yes, as we're watching the
Yeah.
video, yes. Although she's repeating the use of extension in this video. And from what you're saying, it's probably related to trying to hold a rein contact.
Yeah.
Like just there, see, she keeps thinking about wanting to go longer through her
Yes.
neck, but she falls forward.
She falls on her face. Yeah.
Right. So those are two different issues.
Okay.
When they lengthen the neck and supple the, let me take a step back. When they go into extension, which is an instinctual posture, as well as a way to rapidly stabilize the body when they lose balance, right? And it can become a habit if they're not strong and stable through their back and hindquarters. Extension is always the easy answer. So because that was her easy answer for a long time, as you move her forward, anything you ask her to do has to be what can she do without resorting to extension. And because she's not stable in her back and hindquarter, that's not going to be much. So taking a rein contact is a good experiment. I would do it once in a while. But if she starts rocking the saddle side to side, I would be just as quick to let it go.
Okay.
Because in so far the 5.5 minutes that you've been riding, she's more often shaking you than smoothing out in the
Yes.
saddle, right?
I
So
think
that,
it got better as the ride went on. But like you said at the beginning, she's looking a little better there to me than when we started.
yes. And that's how you're going to need to play with it. But the one issue is extension coupled with the neck and top line muscles shortening which makes her hard to ride and shakes you a lot.
Mhm.
Long and low is only a muscular change by increasing the stability in the alignment and rotation. As soon as you barely get the axial skeleton stabilized laterally, they're going to at least change the muscle use through the neck and the back. But once they change the muscle use, what you'll often get is less stability before you get more, because they've been doing that because they're unstable, right?
Okay.
So the body, the horse's body, if we divide it in half, right where we sit, if from the saddle to the tail is not the stable portion of the body during motion, then the front end kicks in.
Right.
Right.
That
So
makes
where
sense.
she's been tight in her neck and shoulders and back is because her hindquarter was not the area of her body where she was finding stability and motion. So it's a little bit chicken and egg. We have to increase the stability of the hindquarter, and that can only be done if she's out of extension.
Okay.
To actually lift the back, which is really where the back is going to be stable, the muscles of the neck and the back have to work and contract in length, eccentric contraction. As soon as they resort to concentric contraction, that tells us that the spine is going the wrong way. It's going down and not up. So from extension to long and low is just saying, don't push the spine down, don't shorten the muscles of the top line. But as soon as she's down there, then when you start to ask for speed adjustments or work on stabilizing the hindquarter, if she resorts back to extension with any technique or strategy you try, I would say try a different one.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So with steering, to me, the steering mechanism that involves the reins, ideally the steering is just a direction from our body in the saddle. But if they're not in balance or they're not stable in their back and hindquarter, they don't follow our seat and we need the reins. So even on the buckle, if I have a horse like her that's sensitive, and she's super sensitive to bit pressure, because you're not giving her a lot of rein contact,
No.
but it's enough for her to say, I
Mhm.
can't really truly lengthen the muscles of my back and neck. I can only lengthen so far and then I have to hold. So if I need steering, whether it's for a video or you might want steering as a strategy for building stability in the hindquarter.
Okay.
But the steering I'm going to use I only need, if I have to use a rein as part of steering, I only need one.
Okay.
I don't need a rein contact on two reins. I only need pressure on one rein to actually make a turn or influence direction with the reins. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So from the buckle, I can take a tiny bit or a lot of one rein, and they
Okay.
can't get behind one rein. They can't get
Right.
above one rein, because you isolate the pressure from rein to rein. They can't respond in a negative way to bit pressure. It just eliminates rein contact or a learned response to rein contact altogether. Just takes it out of the equation.
Okay.
And you have great moments in here. So I would say I would play with rein contact, because it looks like it's almost useful, but at this point, it's a little bit in your way because it's perpetuating her use of pushing the back down more
Mhm.
than it's helping her stabilize the back. So it's not whether rein contact is right or wrong, it's whether the horse responds to it
Mhm.
with the use that we're trying to encourage or with the use that we're trying to discourage. And primarily in this video, at least it's only 6 minutes or so, so it's going back through, you have a lot of moments where she starts to explore the rein contact in a very useful way. So
Yes.
I wouldn't eliminate it from my work with her. I might save it for the end of the session.
That's usually when it's the most appropriate. When she first comes out, and this little video was 30 minutes into my ride. I mean, it took 30 minutes to get her to this point.
And so before this point, when you warm her up, what are you doing?
Just walking on the buckle.
Great. And her head's down below her withers.
Yes, usually.
Okay. So I would give her 5 minutes of that as your warm up.
Okay.
From there, I would experiment, and every day could be different. But the strategies for building stability, because even if they're in long and low, that doesn't mean you have a straight, stable center line where the muscles of the back are supporting the stability of rotation, stabilizing rotation and alignment. It just means you have a better potential to use the right muscles when they're in long and low than you do if they're in extension. It's not going to happen. They're going to use the muscles the wrong way or use the wrong muscles in extension. So from that warm up, I would just let her have 5 minutes of mooching around on the buckle. And then I would begin asking questions.
Okay.
Particularly questions related to stability. And when we say stability, there's 2 different ways we can look at it. We could say stabilizing the midline, which is what we feel maybe between the front legs, from the neck to our seat bones, from our seat bones to the tail, should feel like a broomstick straight line of force.
Yeah, don't feel like that.
Okay. So that's one strategy, would be to not steer and just work on reducing the wiggle of that midline and increasing stability head to tail.
Okay.
Right. That can be done with or without steering. That's an internal conversation between your body and her body. It will involve the reins, but alternating pressure. So you can put a tiny bit of pressure on the left rein or the right rein all the way back at the buckle. You don't necessarily need a rein contact to stabilize left and right alternately, right? So, and if, like here where she tightens, just the last vestige of extension, what's working against you with the rein contact is you can't feel the bones as long as the muscles are tight.
Right.
It's very hard to feel what the bones are doing through the muscle. All we know is if we can't feel the bones clearly, especially through our reins and our hands where we're sensitive, then the muscles are too tight to feel the bones, which means the muscles are tight because the bones are unstable. It all gets kind of overlapping here. You following me?
Yep.
So after your 5 minutes, you could approach working with just stabilizing that center line.
Okay.
You could try without steering. You could try with steering. So without steering, you would feel her change the direction of the saddle every time her hindquarters shift a little bit left or right when they get unstable. If you follow the hindquarters with the neck, so you feel the change of direction in your seat bones, you put the neck in front of your seat bones, no matter the change of direction. That way, no matter when she loses stability with her hindquarter and you put the neck in front of the new direction of the hindquarter, you instantly regain stability, even though you're giving up direction.
Okay.
You're basically allowing her to choose the direction as her hindquarter shifts left and right out of her control, but you can increase the stability. If that doesn't help, you can try steering, which will help you if you pick a focal point from where you are, point A, to any point B, even if it's a 6-foot straight line. You can do it in 3-foot segments, 6-foot segments, 60-foot segments. It doesn't matter. But what that helps us do is if we imagine we're walking the path of travel in our body, we more intuitively, so our focus is strong on getting our pelvis and legs to track a specific path. So the path of travel is for us visually, not the horse.
Okay.
But what the path of travel helps us do when we see it is control the use of our body to maintain a straight line, which then allows us to give about a bazillion aids at the same time throughout our reins, our seat, our torso, our upper leg, our lower leg, everything, to resist any wiggle off of that line underneath us.
That makes sense for her.
Excuse me. Hang on. Sorry, I have a tickle. Oh, okay. So, so steering can sometimes help us feel how to resist the more subtle versions of instability.
Okay.
The bigger versions of instability are sometimes addressed faster if we don't steer. So if you feel her really fight you on a path of travel and it feels like you're suddenly working really hard and she's going back into extension when you're steering, then you could start without steering.
Okay.
Okay. So you could start with your warm up, then maybe move to not steering. If you feel during your warm up, she's constantly sort of changing direction, that would alert me to go from the warm up into the next phase of the ride without steering.
Okay.
And then as those sort of changes of direction became less random or had less force behind them, I would start trying to steer. And I might only start with 3-foot lines, just a simple focus, and see, can we go for 3 feet? And if that was easy, I go, okay, can we double that to 6 feet? And if that was easy, could we double it to 12 feet? And if steering, if you find that having a visual path of travel really helps her stay out of extension, then it tells you that you're giving her the support to stabilize her back and hindquarter. So from that point, I might explore turns, serpentines, or circles and see if on a turn or a constant change of turn, if that didn't help her place her hind legs a little deeper under her body, increasing the engagement and furthering the stability of the hindquarter. If she wiggles out of a turn or goes back to extension, that's my stop sign.
Okay.
I go, okay, even though it's theoretically a good idea, it doesn't mean it's going to work right now.
Right.
So it doesn't have to work right now. Like with where you're at with her, with all the improvements, I would probably be trying all these things in one ride.
Okay. I will.
Okay. So from your warm up, you're kind of assessing how stable is her hindquarter if I let her choose where she's going. If it's really unstable, I wouldn't even attempt steering until it felt more stable and she was trying to change direction less often.
Yeah, she automatically comes out when I get on her in extension. I mean, it's like it takes her time to unravel herself.
So play with those ideas right away then.
Yeah.
If she's in extension when you start, I wouldn't wait for her to come out of it. I
Okay.
would have there's a lot of strategies for interrupting extension. And if that's the warm up, like if she came out and I got on at the mounting block and the first few steps she plunged into long and low, then everything we just talked about within one ride would be appropriate.
Okay.
If she comes out, you get on, she comes off the mounting block in extension, a lot or a little, I would be maybe overbending the neck a little.
Okay.
And making turns to say, don't be an extension. I'm going to interrupt an extension because it's a losing battle. You're setting yourself up for nothing but minimal progress and a lot of frustration to try to stabilize that rotation function as long as they're in extension. Extension is creating the problem, and all you're doing is maybe mitigating the problem a little,
That's
but
what I
not
feel like. Yeah,
but not resolving it.
exactly. That's what I feel like.
So if she comes out, and how long would you say it takes her to just get out of extension and choose long and low if you do nothing?
If I just let her go wherever she wants, it's 5 or 10 minutes.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
So that would also tell me there's no need to allow it.
Okay.
I would get on and I would actively maybe do a figure 8, knowing I need one rein to turn.
Okay.
But I might do tight little figure 8s, making extension difficult for her to stay in. Right? Or I
Okay.
might do a circle for one way for a little while and then a circle. I'm going to search for what helps you get into long and low right away.
It's usually very big, like, cowboy turns with my reins.
Then as long as you're using it for the sole purpose of interrupting extension, it's fine. It's not going to do any damage, because if they're in extension, leaving them in extension is more problematic than a temporary overbend, overturn for the sake of getting them out of it.
Yeah. See how
So
unstable she is and wobbly? It's just like,
yes, yes. And that has to do with an unstable hindquarter, as well as still being in a mild version of extension. And the extension perpetuates because that rotation problem, the hyper rotation, which is the side effect of the spine pushing down an extension, goes all the way back through the spine to the pelvis. So the lumbar, sacrum, and pelvis act sort of like one unit. So her whole hindquarter rocks too much side to side rather than engaging and bringing the hind legs forward. So getting her out of extension with turns and circles, overbending the neck is not good. It's going to create inverted rotation. So you just know every time you have to overbend the neck, you're also going to have to sit to the inside.
okay.
Right? And you don't want to do it a lot, or you create a pattern of inverted rotation. But at the same time, the only benefit of it is it sort of forces the inside hind leg up into adduction, which means you're going to affect the placement of the hind legs. So I would alternate my bending left, right,
Yes.
left, right. Once she decides she can stay in long and low, then she just needs 5 minutes to let the muscles sort of relax and adjust to a different use. And from there, then I would sort of assess, is she wildly changing direction? Okay, I'm going to start without steering, put the neck in front of the tail wherever she puts the tail.
That she likes to change direction a lot.
So what that means is, without excessive muscle contraction and without extension, you feel a lot of instability, which is the residual problem of being in extension. So if I'm on a horse and they're in long and low, but I feel them constantly sort of altering the direction, and if you could try steering, because either steering is going to help the stability and help her stay in long and low more consistently, or it's going to put her back in extension. So our guidance is a question, not a demand. We go, if I steer you from the saddle with a little bit of rein support, does that help you stay in long and low for the next 5 minutes? Or does it make you resort back to extension? She's the only one with that answer, and that answer can change ride to ride. So I'm going to ask the question. If it puts her back in extension, really the only thing I can do is allow the swinging of the pelvis, which changes the direction of the saddle because she can't control it, right? But what I can do is keep lining up the body. So every time the hindquarter shifts to the right, I'm going to put the front end slightly left. So I reestablish my straight midline over and
Okay.
over and over and over, right? If that helps her stay in long and low during motion, then that would be my first approach. But
Okay.
she could, either way will work depending on the horse. So I'm going to try not steering, I'm going to try steering, and I'm going to see which one helps her stabilize out of extension.
Okay.
And then if that was hard to get, long and low might be my first goal. If that's easy to get, then I'm going to play with steering if I haven't already. And if I can steer, I'm going to play with turns, serpentines, and circles to see if I can get more engagement and stability to the hindquarter and back. And I don't need to pick up my reins for any of that.
Okay. Yeah.
Any of it. If all of that goes well, then I would pick up my reins, but I'd still be alternating pressure. I would see, I'd still be doing the same work with shorter reins. So the only thing that shorter reins gives us is a more rapid response to what we're already talking about. We just speed up the tempo of the conversation, but we don't change what we're talking about.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And this is like, it's good. You've brought her a long way from high-headed, wiggly, no steering, catapulting you side to side out of the saddle. Like all of this is a huge improvement. And so seeing that you're unstable is part of it because it's better than it was.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to go, well, maybe this is just how she moves.
No,
No, no,
I'm not going to accept that. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
Yeah.
I still know that we can get there.
Absolutely. And she's
Yeah.
more engaged than she's ever been. She's more stable than she's ever been. She's less tight through her muscles and has better control of her coordination in her spine more than ever. So it's just, and when we talk about balance as a goal of training, it's just cycles of the same work.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
You pass over, like if we say extension is a problem we want to avoid, as we cycle around development, adding layers of improvement on top of improvements, we always go past the point where they're going to choose extension. So it's like we keep passing the same point because we're on a outward spiraling roundabout. And so recognizing that, because taking away extension doesn't make her stable.
No.
And that's why the extension gets perpetuated, is because it's the body's instinct to find stability, not just for fight and flight. Sometimes it's like, ooh, I lost my balance. I'm going to go into startle and tighten everything so that I feel stable in this moment. And that's what I think you're up against more than anything.
I agree.
She doesn't want to go back to being an extension, and it's not even the old pogo stick trot you used to have.
No, it's not. It's not.
She's trying to find something new. So the perpetuation of extension from her, I think, is directly related to her not feeling stable in the bones of her back and skeleton in coordination. Like she gets the coordination, she loses it. She gets it, she loses it.
It's like 2 to 4 strides, and that's it.
So now that you know the feel, every time she rocks the saddle, I would become active. That's where I would start to go, what do we need to change? And change it soon. Like a horse like her, I would be saying, we're out of extension by the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, back to long and low. Oops, back to extension. 1, 2, 3, back to long and low. Like that fast from the moment I get on.
Okay.
Then as she stays in long and low, she may need 5 minutes, 15 minutes. It's not going to hurt her. But while she's in long and low, what you're then doing is asking yourself the question, what's the path of least resistance to increase stability without her resorting back to extension. And there are a lot of strategies to do that. And sometimes the horse, anytime she's resorting back to extension, you eliminate that strategy for the moment.
Okay.
You don't try to work through it. You just go, not going to work. Let me try something else.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you do a very good job working through it. That's the problem, actually. And that's what you're doing in this video. You're going, I need a rein contact to steer because I'm doing a video. It's not our normal thing, but it should be working. And then you work through it. But if you look at stride by stride of your ride, what percentage of time are you actually getting the change that you want?
Right.
It's not a high enough percentage for me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the danger of becoming more effective as a rider and having the competitor's sort of frame of mind of progress is we go, if we're not working hard, we're not working. So anytime you find yourself having to sort of do a million things at once, or you feel like you're in an area where it's not easy and you're struggling a little, I would look at exploring different strategies than what you're doing currently.
Okay.
And ask her the question, does this work? Does this work? Is this easy for you? Is this easy for you?
Well, she normally, and she's doing it here too, she wants to do all these sharp turns.
That is the instability of her hindquarter in real time. The sharp turns tell you that, and because it's hard for us to sense the lateral rolling of the pelvis, because the lumbar, pelvis, sacrum, hindquarter are inherently the most stable area of the horse's body by physical design. So when the most stable mechanism loses stability, we don't feel it like we do the shoulders and the neck and even the upper back, where we feel the rolling and we see the instability. What we feel instead is this frickin' horse is changing direction all the time and I can't steer. That is how we know the hindquarter is not stable.
Okay, good to know.
It's tilting too much. It's out of her control. She's not engaged enough, right? So that loss of what makes steering really difficult is instability in the hindquarter. And that's why I go, okay, on every potential path of travel in the universe, we need a stable hindquarter and we need a straight horse. So when I don't steer, it's not that I'm not balancing the horse. I'm just letting the horse choose the path of travel because it's more work for me to choose the path of travel and it's not working. So I go, if the horse changes the path of travel every 3 strides, who cares? Because we need it on this path and we need it on that path. It's like green eggs and ham. It does not matter, right? So if you still feel like you walk a few straight steps and she pulls you in a new direction, that is the instability of the hindquarter.
Okay.
And the hindquarter can't be stable if the neck and shoulders are on a different line than the middle of the hindquarters.
Yeah, she like slows down and does this immediate sharp turn, and it's really hard because she wants to catapult me one direction or the other. That's her game.
That's just centrifugal force.
Yeah.
So the sudden changes of direction indicate to me a big challenge with her feeling stable from her hindquarters.
Okay.
So especially if it's sort of sharp enough that you're feeling that force that throws you to the outside, then I would guess from that description, I would probably start without steering.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
because
sense.
what perpetuates the way they compensate for an unstable hindquarter is they shift their shoulders and neck in the opposite direction of the hindquarters. So the body, by laterally bending or creating more rotation, they stabilize the loss of balance in the hindquarter with a misuse loss of balance
Up
with the front
front.
end. And that's where you lose the center line. So
Yes.
you'll feel like it's a zigzag or that the hind legs are on a different track than the front legs.
Yes.
So the way we were taught as riders is to move our leg back and push the hindquarters back in line. So we're constantly sort of moving our legs back to try to move the back of the barrel and the hindquarters behind the front end. And I go, but if you look at the mechanical design of the body, first of all, the hindquarters are unstable. So when we ask them to move again, we've just made them double unstable. Right? That's not really exactly correct grammar, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So it already lost its balance. And now when we try to push it back in line, we've just increased the instability. We haven't really solved the problem. And in the meantime, the front end of the horse, the neck, the front legs, the upper thoracic are the most mobile parts of the skeleton. So one day it occurred to me, why am I fighting all of this massive bone and tendon and ligament and muscle and inherently stable part of the horse by trying to move the hind end with my little ankle? Why don't I just put the front end in front of it wherever it goes?
Okay.
And what that gave me was instant stability for the hindquarter, even though I was letting the horse choose the path of travel.
Okay. That I
go,
think is going to be the most helpful.
Yeah, it's the most helpful with any horse that's really unstable behind. And the way
especially with our extension problem, because if I'll try focusing on a point. I've tried that before and it's never worked. So, but I'll try it again.
You can try it and you'll know
Yeah.
in 2 seconds
Yeah.
if it works or doesn't. Just like you can see here in 2 seconds, taking the lightest possible rein contact. You have great hands, you have great balance. It's nothing you're doing wrong. Her response to any consistent feel on the bit is to go back to extension.
Yeah.
So when they push the spine down in extension, it is the cause of destabilizing the hindquarter. So you can't stabilize the hindquarter while you're causing instability at the same time.
Okay.
That's why I go, we all need that step of long and low to change and reverse the pattern. Right? So only in long and low can you start. Long and low is where you quit making the hindquarter unstable.
Okay.
It's not where you truly stabilize the hindquarter, but at least you quit creating the problem.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like my head feels so much better when I quit banging it against the wall. Right?
Yeah, quit pushing on the door. Maybe it opens the other way.
Yes.
That would be me.
So long and low for her is just stopping the generation of the problem, right?
Yeah.
Which is making her hindquarters rock side to side. So once she's in long and low, if you feel like she's constantly changing direction, then what that tells you is you're now feeling the instability that is the result of being an extension. So then the question becomes, how do we increase stability of the pelvis, of the low back? And what I found is, which just doesn't occur to us because we're so conditioned to think we control the movement, we control the horse. It was just this big aha moment when I went, okay, I know the skeleton, I know the mechanics. Why am I battling the larger part of the body when I could simply move the more mobile part of the body that's easier to move? So I started just putting the neck in front of every change of direction and using my reins to stabilize the neck bones to the back in front of the ever-changing direction of the hindquarters. And that gave instant stability to very unstable hindquarters. Wherever we went, we became stable. From there, the steering became possible, which was a refinement of the straightness, the alignment, rotation, and furthering the stability of the back and hindquarter. But if I'm steering, putting the horse in extension, I may get really specifically where I want to go, but I'm never creating stability through steering because the use of extension is constantly creating instability.
Yeah.
So what's the point?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And eventually, even getting her out of extension by overbending the neck and doing tight turns will at least start to change the leg placement a little bit.
Yes.
And once she's in long and low, you have several different strategies to play with and just keep saying, what gives me the consistency of the change I want? Because that's where you build muscle. Right?
Okay.
One or two steps. And I go, that's why the percentage of time that she's sneaking in extension would be important to me, because I go, the percentage of time spent in one use or posture versus another use or posture is where we build muscle. So if they're not there long enough, you never build the muscle to support it, which is why it becomes a perpetual problem.
Okay.
Yeah. But you're so close. So close. Yeah, this is really good.
Yeah. It's good to see these videos because you don't always feel what is going on.
No, our perception can be a little skewed.
So
And
this was a big eye opener. It's like, gosh, we're still not there yet.
yeah. And the only thing you're battling with her right now is the stability of her back and hindquarter.
Yes, I agree.
Gaining lateral stability is easier than trying to flex the spine. Flexing the spine also gives us stability, but when they're this wiggly and unstable, sometimes it's too much too soon.
I agree.
Right. But that would be another option to increase flexion. You still don't need a rein contact. You could just play with transitions.
Transitions are hard on her, as you can see.
Yeah. So, and the way
she does better. See, this is interesting. She does better on the lunge line with her transitions.
So, and there are no rules. So maybe you tackle the problem of flexion only on the lunge line, where she does better without the weight of the rider. And you play with walk, trot, canter transitions up and down to see if you can improve flexion. Then when you ride, maybe her bigger challenge is stability and straightness. So you focus on that when you ride.
That's a good plan. Yeah.
There's no rules about how much work you do on the ground or under saddle.
Okay.
You're just looking for, where can I stabilize alignment, stabilize rotation, increase flexion. And the only way you can really improve any of those three functions is if she's not in extension. Because extension is the opposite direction of flexion, opposite muscle use, and has the side effect of hyperrotation. So in extension, you lose everything.
Yes, I agree.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Good job. She's getting there.
Yes.
And what's nice to see is, I think that is your only problem, is stability, because you both know what it feels like and she's looking for it. She just can't quite hold it.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah. And trying the rein contact is a good idea, but you could also try without.
And
I'll
play with it and see if I can do some more recordings of both.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, and see, so that I can see what's happening with the feels and put the two together.
Yeah, and think when you ride, stillness is stillness.
Right.
Lack of force against us as a rider is lack of force.
Yeah, that's
So
what they
even
want.
though we could say better, we can also say not there yet.
Not there yet. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, because better is good.
Yeah.
Like better
It's
is the
just,
path.
it's
But
just so small little steps, you know. So
yes. And if you think of all of the muscles affecting
yeah,
the vertebral joints all along that big, long, massive spine of a horse, there's a lot of muscle tone. Maybe there's atrophied muscle we have to build. Maybe there's tight
right.
muscle we have to supple. All of those muscular changes along the entire spine are not quick.
No.
Yeah.
No. So,
But we feel we're either improving it or we're making it worse.
yeah.
So, but good job. I can't wait for your next one.
All right.
Okay.
See you
Stop
soon.
there.